He didn't even let me finish my coffee. Brandon Keller stood in the doorway of my office, arms crossed, chin up like he'd rehearsed this in the mirror. His suit was navy, expensive, and entirely too tight across the shoulders. The kind of fit that screamed insecurity wrapped in Italian wool. "Soraya," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We're letting you go effective immediately. My name is Soraya Bennett. I'm 47 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, in a house with a view of the hill country that I paid off 3 years ago. And until this exact moment, I was the co-founder and chief operations officer of Elevate Data Solutions, a cybersecurity firm that processes threat assessments for half the Fortune 500. I set my mug down slowly. Steam curled up between us. I didn't blink. "Excuse me," I said. He shifted his weight, but his expression stayed locked. Confident, practiced. "The board's decided to move in a new direction. We need leadership that aligns with our evolving vision." Evolving vision? I almost laughed. "And who authorized this decision?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "Measured. The way you speak when you already know the answer." "I did," he said. "I'm the acting SEO now. That gives me full discretion over personnel." Acting SEO. Brandon Keller, 32 years old, MBA from a school that handed out degrees like participation trophies. He'd been with the company for exactly 11 months. Before that, he worked in venture capital, which is a polite way of saying he moved money around and called it strategy. He got hired because his father, Leonard Keller, owned a 12% stake in the company and had been whispering in ears at board meetings for the better part of a year. Networking masked as nepotism. And now here he was standing in my office like he owned it. "You don't have the authority to remove a founding officer." I said. "That requires a formal board resolution." In writing, he smiled. "Not warm. The board's already aligned. This isn't up for debate." I stood up fully. He straightened a little like he thought I might throw something. I didn't. I picked up my phone, slid it into my bag, and grabbed my jacket off the back of the chair. "Understood," I said. His eyebrows lifted just a fraction. He wasn't expecting that. I walked past him without another word. Down the hallway, past the glass-walled conference rooms where my team sat hunched over laptops, pretending they hadn't just watched the whole thing through the windows. Nobody made eye contact. The air was thick with the kind of silence that only comes when people know something bad just happened and don't want to get caught in the blast radius. I took the elevator down to the parking garage. My car was in the same spot it had been for 6 years, reserved, my name stenkled on the concrete barrier in faded white paint. I got in, closed the door, and sat there for a moment. Engine off, hands on the wheel. My chest felt tight, but not from fear, from pressure. The kind that builds when something shifts and you realize the ground under you isn't what you thought it was. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out my laptop, and opened it on the passenger seat. I connected to my phone's hotspot and waited for the screen to load. 3 seconds. That's all it took. I pulled up the company charter, the original one. The one I wrote myself in a coffee shop 7 years ago with my co-founder Nicholas Warren before we had an office or a logo or a single client. Before Brandon Keller even knew what a data breach was. I scrolled down to Section 6 subsection C. There was underlined highlighted in yellow because I'd flagged it 2 years ago when Nicholas told me he wanted to step back. No founding officer may be removed from their position without a 2/3 majority vote of the board, documented in writing, and delivered with 30 days' notice. Brandon hadn't given me 30 days. He hadn't given me 30 minutes. I took a screenshot, attached it to an email, typed in the addresses of all 9 board members. Subject line: immediate review required. Charter violation. Body of the email: 1 sentence. Refer to Section 6C. I'll be in the office tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss next steps. I hit send. Then I opened another folder, the one labeled Equity Distribution Master File. It was a spreadsheet I updated every quarter, every stock transfer, every vesting schedule, every option exercised, every silent partner bought out. Nicholas had left the company 18 months ago. Sold me his shares at a discount because he was tired and wanted to sail around the Caribbean with his wife. I didn't blame him. I bought him out quietly. No press release, no farewell tour, just paperwork and a wire transfer. After that, I kept acquiring piece by piece. Whenever a board member wanted to liquidate, whenever an early investor got nervous and wanted to cash out, I made offers, fair ones, quiet ones, and over time I just accumulated more. By the time Brandon Keller walked into my office this morning, I owned 83% of Elevate Data Solutions. I stared at the number on the screen. 83, not 82, not 80, 83. I closed the laptop and started the engine. My phone rang before I even pulled out of the garage. It was my attorney, Felicia Grayson. She didn't wait for me to say hello. I just saw the email, she said. You want to tell me what happened? Brandon Keller fired me this morning. No board vote, no documentation. Just walked in and said I was done. She let out a low whistle. That's bold and stupid. Very. You want me to draft a response? Not yet. Let them sweat. I'll handle the board meeting tomorrow. And if they try to block you, they won't. Pause. I could hear her tapping a pen against her desk. Zariah, 83% is nuclear. You know that, right? Do. You could dismantle the whole board if you wanted. No. Are you going to? I didn't answer right away. I pulled out of the garage and into the late morning traffic. Sunlight hit the windshield. I squinted, reached for my sunglasses. I'm going to do what needs to be done, I said. She laughed, quiet, almost sad. That's what I thought. Call me if you need anything. And Zariah. Don't let them see you coming. Hung up. The rest of the day passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. I didn't go home. I went to a coffee shop on the east side, the kind with mismatched furniture and indie music that's just loud enough to drown out conversations. I sat in the corner with my laptop and a black coffee that went cold while I worked. I pulled every document I'd need for tomorrow. The charter, the equity reports, the emails between Nicholas and me when we restructured ownership, the board meeting minutes from the last 2 years. I organized everything into a single folder and uploaded it to a secure cloud server. Then I printed hard copies. Resets. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon just to confirm. We'll have your final paycheck processed by end of week. Please return all company property by Friday. I stared at the message. He really thought it was over. He really thought he'd won. I didn't reply. Another text came through. This one from Adeline Keaton, one of the board members. She was old school, former CFO of a pharmaceutical company. Sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. Zariah, I just saw your email. We need to talk. Call me when you can. Called her. She picked up on the first ring. What the hell is going on? Brandon fired me this morning. No vote, no notice, just a unilateral decision. He can't do that. No. Does he know? Apparently not. She sighed. Heavy, tired. This is Leonard's doing. He's been pushing for Brandon to take a bigger role. I didn't think he'd go this far. Well, he did. What do you need from me? Just show up tomorrow. 9 a.m. conference room A. I'll handle the rest. You're not going to burn the place down, are you? I smiled even though she couldn't see it. Only if I have to. She hung up. By the time I left the coffee shop, it was dark outside. The streets were quieter. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cool air clear my head. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a minute, engine idling, staring at the house. I built this, not just the house, the company, the career, the reputation. I wasn't about to let some overpaid trust fund kid with a god complex take it away because his daddy made a phone call. I went inside, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on the back porch. The hill country stretched out in front of me, dark and endless under a sky full of stars. I didn't think about tomorrow. I didn't rehearse what I'd say. I just sat there quiet, letting the weight of the day settle. Some point my phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from Nicholas. Heard what happened. You okay? Type back. I will be. You need anything? Just your old office chair. I'm taking it back tomorrow. He sent a laughing emoji. Then give them Helly. I didn't reply. I finished my wine, went inside and went to bed. I woke up at 5:30. No alarm. My body just knew. I made coffee, toast with almond butter, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I reviewed everything one more time. The numbers, the clauses, the timeline. By the time I was done, it was 7:15. I showered, dressed, black slacks, white blouse, navy blazer, professional, plain. No jewelry except my watch. I pulled my hair back, checked my reflection and grabbed my bag. I was out the door by 8. The drive to the office took 23 minutes. Parked in my old spot. The paint was still there. My name, Zariah Bennett, who I walked through the lobby. The receptionist, a kid named Trevor, who couldn't have been older than 23, looked up and froze. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. The doors opened. I stepped inside. When I reached the executive floor, the energy had already shifted. People were moving faster. Voices were lower. I could feel the tension humming through the walls. The conference room door was closed. I didn't knock. I pushed it open and walked in. Brandon was already there, sitting at the head of the table like he'd claimed it. Leonard Keller sat to his right, arms folded, expression unreadable. The rest of the board was scattered around the room. Adeline was near the window. 2 other members, Henry Wallace and Claudia Park, sat across from each other, tablets open. The remaining board members filled in the gaps. Everyone looked up when I walked in. I didn't sit. I stood at the opposite end of the table, set down my bag and pulled out the folder. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Zariah Bennett. I'm the co-founder and chief operations officer of this company. Yesterday, I was unlawfully terminated by Brandon Keller without board approval, without documentation, and in direct violation of our corporate charter." Brandon leaned back in his chair. "This is unnecessary, Zariah. We've already made our decision." "You don't get to make that decision alone," I said. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Section 6, subsection C. No founding officer may be removed without a 2/3 board vote documented in writing with 30 days' notice. "You gave me none of that." Leonard spoke up. His voice was smooth, controlled. "Zariah, we're restructuring. Brandon is the future of this company. It's time to let the next generation lead. Leadership isn't about age," I said. "It's about competence. And what Brandon did yesterday wasn't leadership. It was reckless." Brandon's jaw tightened. "I was hired to modernize this company. That's what I'm doing. You were hired to manage operations, not dismantle the foundation." Adeline cleared her throat. "Zariah, what exactly are you asking for?" I looked at her, then at the rest of the board. "I'm asking for a formal vote to reverse my termination and to address Brandon's breach of protocol." Brandon stood up. "This is a waste of time." "Sit down," Adeline said. Her voice was sharp. He sat. She looked at me. "Do you have documentation?" I slid the papers across the table. "Everything's here. Charter clauses, equity reports, email records. It's all legal. It's all binding." Henry picked up one of the documents and scanned it. His eyebrows went up. He looked at Leonard. "Did you know about this?" Leonard didn't answer. Claudia spoke next. "Zariah, if we proceed with this vote, what happens to Brandon?" "That depends on the board," I said. "But I'm not going anywhere." Brandon's face flushed. "This is insane. You're trying to sabotage me." "No, I said you sabotaged yourself." Adeline stood up. "All right, let's vote. All in favor of reversing Zariah Bennett's termination and restoring her position as SUA, raise your hand." One by one, hands went up. Eline, Henry, Claudia. 3 more, 6 in total. Leonard didn't move. Neither did Brandon or the 2 board members who'd clearly been in his pocket from the start. Adeline counted. 6 votes in favor. Motion passes. Brandon slammed his hand on the table. "This is a coup." "No, I said this is accountability." He looked at his father. Leonard's face was stone. He didn't say a word. Adeline turned to me. "Zariah, you're reinstated. Effective immediately." He nodded. "Thank you." Brandon grabbed his phone and stormed out. The door slammed behind him. Leonard stood slowly, adjusted his tie, and walked out without looking at anyone. The room was silent for a moment. Then Henry spoke. Well, that was something. Claudia laughed. Quiet, nervous. Understatement of the year. Adeline walked over to me. You okay? I will be, I said. She nodded. Good, because we've got a lot of work to do. I stayed in the conference room after everyone left. Just me and the scattered papers and the faint smell of coffee someone had spilled earlier. I sat down in one of the chairs, not the one at the head of the table, just a regular one near the middle, and exhaled. My phone buzzed. Text from Felicia. Heard you won. Drinks on you. I typed back, boys. Then I stood up, gathered my things and walked back to my office. The door was still open. My desk was still there. My coffee mug was exactly where I'd left it yesterday morning. I sat down, opened my laptop and got to work. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Not chaos, just motion. Constant, deliberate motion. Brandon didn't come back to the office. He sent an email to HR the day after the board meeting, citing philosophical differences and resigning his position. No fight, no appeal, just gone. Leonard stopped attending board meetings. He still held his 12%, but he stopped voting, stopped engaging, stopped pretending he cared. I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. Instead, I focused on what mattered. I pulled up every initiative Brandon had started in his 11 months and reviewed them one by one. Some were fine, most were not. He'd allocated $47,000 to a rebrand that involved changing our logo to something that looked like a rejected tech startup from 2015. Killed it. Refunded the vendor. Reverted to the original. He'd hired 3 growth strategists whose job descriptions were so vague I couldn't tell if they were consultants or motivational speakers. I let them go politely with severance. He'd pushed for a company-wide pivot toward consumer products, which made 0 sense for a B2B cybersecurity firm. I archived the entire project folder and redirected the budget back into enterprise solutions. By the end of the first week, I'd cut 19 unnecessary expenses and reallocated over $200,000 to research and development. The second week I met with every department head. One by one, no grand speeches, just sit-downs. Asked 3 questions. What's working? What's not? What do you need? They answered. Took notes. Acted. Operations needed better project management software. I approved the purchase that afternoon. Engineering wanted to bring back the quarterly innovation hackathons Brandon had cancelled. I reinstated them and added a budget of $15,000 per event. Sales needed more flexibility in pricing for long-term contracts. I revised the approval process and gave them autonomy up to certain thresholds. Nothing flashy, just functional leadership. By the 3rd week the company felt different. Not because of some dramatic overhaul, just because things worked again. People stopped looking over their shoulders. Meetings got shorter. Decisions happened faster. One afternoon, I was walking through the main office floor when I overheard 2 engineers talking by the coffee machine. One of them said, "It quiet, almost under his breath. Feels like we're actually building something again." I didn't stop, didn't acknowledge it, just kept walking, but I filed it away. Late one Thursday night, I was still in my office when Adeline called. "You're still there, aren't you?" she said. "Baby, go home, Zariah." "I will soon," she sighed. "You know, I've been on a lot of boards, seen a lot of leadership transitions. This was one of the messiest and one of the cleanest. I don't follow. It was messy because it shouldn't have happened. Brandon never should have had that much power. But it was clean because you didn't burn the place down. You just fixed it." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You chose not to destroy. That says something." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. She filled the silence. "Leonard's selling his shares, by the way. Quietly through a broker. Word is he's embarrassed. But, you going to buy them?" "Thought about it. Maybe. Depends on the price." She laughed. "You're ruthless. You know that. I'm practical. Same thing." She hung up. I closed my laptop and looked around the office. It was quiet. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the faint glow of the city lights outside the window. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. On my way out, I stopped by the main hallway, the one with the framed photos of company milestones, ribbon cuttings, product launches, team celebrations. Most of them had me in the background. Brandon wasn't in any of them. I turned off the lights and left. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the back porch again. The stars were out. The air was cool. I didn't think about the company or Brandon or Leonard or any of it. I just sat there quiet and let the day go. My phone buzzed. A text from Nicholas. Heard Leonard's bailing. You okay? Type back. Better than okay. But you earned it. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. The wind picked up rustling through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Smiled. Yeah, I earned it. A month after the board meeting, I got a call from Henry Wallace. He was one of the quieter board members, the kind who listened more than he spoke. But when he did say something, it mattered. Zariah, he said, got a minute always. What's up? I've been talking with a few of the other board members. Evelyn, Claudia, a couple others. We've been thinking about leadership structure. I sat up straighter. Go on. Brandon's gone. Nicholas has been gone for over a year. The CEO position is technically vacant. We need to fill it. Agreed. We want it to be you. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was surprised. I'd been expecting this conversation, but because I wanted to hear him say it all the way through. You've been running the company from the COO seat for 2 years. Henry continued. You stabilized everything after Brandon left. The clients trust you. The staff trust you. The numbers are good. Better than good. You're the logical choice. What about the rest of the board? Unanimous. We already talked. We're ready to vote tomorrow if you are. I looked out the window of my office. It was late afternoon. The sun was starting to dip behind the buildings. Golden light stretched across the floor. I'll need to restructure a few things, I said. Reporting lines, decision-making authority. I'm not interested in being a figurehead. We wouldn't expect you to be. And I want full operational control. No interference, no second-guessing. You'll have it. Pause. Then I said, all right, let's do it. He laughed. That's it. No negotiation, no demands. Already made my demands. You agreed. What else is there? Fair enough. We'll make it official tomorrow. 9 a.m. same conference room. I'll be there. He hung up. I sat there for a minute staring at the phone. It wasn't about the title. It never had been, but it meant something. Meant control. Real control. The kind that couldn't be taken away by someone's nephew or a board member's son. I picked up my laptop and pulled up the equity file again. 83%. I stared at the number, thought about what it meant, what it could mean. Then I closed the file and went back to work. The next morning I walked into the conference room at 8:55. The board was already there. All of them, even Leonard's replacement, a woman named Nina Ortiz, who'd come in 2 weeks ago with a background in venture capital and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Adeline stood up when she saw me. Morning, Zariah. Morning. Ready. Always. She smiled. But let's make this quick. We sat down. Henry pulled up the agenda on the screen at the front of the room. It was short. One item. Vote to appoint Zariah Bennett as Chief Executive Officer of Elevate Data Solutions. Adeline looked around the table. All in favor. 9 hands went up. Unanimous. Motion passes, she said. Zariah, congratulations. You're officially the CEO. He nodded. Thank you. Claudia leaned forward. So what's first? Pulled out a folder. I got a list. First, we're renegotiating our contract with Helix Technologies. They've been paying under market rate for 3 years. That ends this quarter. Henry raised an eyebrow. They're not going to like that. They'll adjust or they'll leave. Either way, we're not undervaluing our services anymore. Na spoke up. What else? We're expanding the engineering team. I want to hire 12 new developers by the end of Q2. Focus on machine learning and threat detection. Budget? Henry asked. I've already reallocated funds from marketing. We're spending too much on campaigns that don't convert. I'm cutting that by 30% and redirecting it to talent acquisition. Adeline nodded. Sounds solid. One more thing, I said. We're opening a second office. Dimmer. We've been getting requests from clients in the mountain region for on-site support. I want to establish a physical presence there. Claudia frowned. That's a big move. What's the timeline? 6 months. I've already scouted locations. I'll have a full proposal ready by next week. Nina leaned back. You've been busy. I've been ready. I said. The meeting wrapped up 20 minutes later. No drama, no debate, just decisions and action items and a clear path forward. When everyone filed out, Adeline stayed behind. She closed the door and turned to me. You know, she said, when Nicholas left, I wasn't sure what would happen. And when Brandon came in, I thought we were headed for disaster. You were right, she smiled. But you pulled it back and now you're here. Majority owner, full control. It wasn't personal, I said. It was structural maybe, but it took you to see it. I didn't argue. She walked to the door then stopped. Don't lose yourself in this, Zariah. The company's important, but it's not everything. No. She nodded and left. I stood there for a moment alone in the conference room. The same room where Brandon had tried to erase me. The same room where I'd fought back. The same room where I'd just become sick. I looked around. Fable, the chairs, the windows overlooking the city. It all looked the same, but it felt different. I picked up my folder and walked back to my office. My office, the CEO's office. Now I sat down, opened my laptop and got to work. The weeks that followed were intense, but not overwhelming. I've been doing this job for years. The only difference now was the title and the authority that came with it. I renegotiated the Helix contract. They pushed back at first, threatened to walk. Let them. 3 days later they called back and agreed to the new terms. Turns out they needed us more than they wanted to admit. I hired the 12 developers. Every single one of them was top tier. I didn't settle. I didn't rush. I waited for the right people and paid them what they were worth. The Denver office took longer. Permits, leases, logistics. But by the end of Q3 we had a location, a small team, a local presence. Clients responded immediately. Revenue from that region jumped 22% in the first quarter. I restructured the executive team, promoted 2 senior managers to VP roles, brought in a new CFO, someone I'd worked with years ago who understood the business and didn't need handholding. I cut 3 board members who hadn't contributed anything in over a year. Replaced them with people who actually cared, people who showed up, people who asked the right questions. And through it all, I kept the company moving forward. No distractions, no drama, just steady, deliberate growth. One Friday afternoon, about 4 months into my tenure as CEO, I got an email. The subject line was simple. Congratulations. Opened it. It was from Brandon. Saw the news about the Denver expansion. Looks like you're doing well. No hard feelings, just wanted to say congrats. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply. Part of me wanted to delete it and never think about it again. In the end, I didn't either. I just closed it and moved on. That night I stayed late again. Not because I had to, just because I wanted to. I liked the quiet, the stillness, the feeling of being alone in a building full of work that mattered. Round 8 my phone rang. It was Nicholas. Hey, I said, hey yourself. You still at the office? Maybe. He laughed. You're going to work yourself into the ground. Fine. You always say that because it's always true. He sighed. All right. Well, I'm calling because I wanted to tell you something. Go ahead. I'm proud of you, Z. I know I don't say it enough, but I am. You took something we built together and made it better, stronger. You didn't just survive. Brandon, you outlasted him. That's not luck. That's skill. I didn't know what to say. Nicholas wasn't the sentimental type. Neither was I. Thanks, I said finally. You earned it, he said. Now go home and get some sleep. I will. Liar. I laughed. Good night, Nicholas. Good night, Z. I hung up and sat there for a while staring at the phone. Then I closed my laptop, grabbed my jacket and headed out. The building was empty. The parking garage was quiet. I got in my car and drove home with the windows down, letting the night air clear my head. When I pulled into my driveway, I looked at the house. The lights were off. The porch was dark, but it was mine, just like the company, just like the career, just like the life I'd built. I went inside, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the back porch one more time. The stars were out. The world was quiet. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office when Adeline knocked on the door. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always." She walked in and closed the door behind her. Leonard's broker reached out. "He's ready to sell his shares." I looked up. "All of them. All 12%. He's asking for 8 million. I did the math in my head. It was fair. Maybe even a little low. "What's the timeline?" "He wants to close within 30 days. I lean back in my chair. "And if I buy them, you'd own 95% of the company." 95, not 83. 95. I looked out the window. The city stretched out in front of me, full of buildings and roads and people who had no idea this conversation was happening. "Make the offer," I said. Adeline smiled. "Already did. Just wanted your confirmation. You knew I'd say yes." "Had a feeling." Left. I sat there for a moment, staring at the door. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the equity file one more time. 83%, soon to be 95. I closed the file and got back to work. The deal closed 3 weeks later. Leonard's shares transferred to me without fanfare. No press release, no announcement, just paperwork and a wire transfer. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone outside of Adeline and my attorney. I just filed the documents and moved on. But that night I stayed late again. I pulled up the equity file and looked at the new number, 95%. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the laptop, turned off the lights and walked out. The building was quiet. The city was alive outside the windows, glowing and humming and moving forward. I took the elevator down, walked through the lobby, and stepped out into the night. The air was cool, the stars were out. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. Life continued. I got in my car and drove home. No music, no podcast, just the sound of the engine in the road and my own thoughts. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at the house. I'd built this, all of it. Not just the house, the company, the career, the control. And I'd done it on my own terms. I turned off the engine, grabbed my bag and went inside. The porch light was on. I'd left it on that morning without thinking. Felt right. I poured a glass of wine, sat on the back porch, and looked out at the hill country. The world was dark and quiet and endless, and I was exactly where I needed to be. The next morning I woke up early, made coffee, checked my email. Nothing urgent, just the usual flow of updates and requests and reports. I got dressed, grabbed my bag and headed to the office. When I walked through the lobby, Trevor, the receptionist, looked up and smiled. "Morning, Miss Bennett." "Morning, Trevor." I took the elevator up, walked down the hallway, past the framed photos of company milestones. I stopped at one of them. Me and Nicholas at the ribbon cutting for our first office 7 years ago. We looked younger, tired, excited. I stared at it for a moment. Then I kept walking. When I got to my office, I sat down my bag, opened my laptop and pulled up the day's agenda. Meetings, decisions, projects, the same work I'd been doing for years, but now it was mine. Really mine. I smiled just a little. Then I got to work because that's what leaders do. They show up. They do the work. They build. And they don't stop.